On Meet the Press yesterday to continue on this, Republican Senator Ron Johnson expressed his outrage about President Biden's documents, the case with the documents that were found.
Well, I mean, if you look back to Ron was also really upset about Trump's documents, right?
No, the Republicans.
Did he not?
They wanted to,
no, but I mean, Trump had a lot more, and he took them, and the FBI and DOJ was asking for them, and he lied and said he wasn't going to give them back, or he said they were his documents, and then they lied, said they'd given them all back, and then he had moved them from one. So Ron was upset about that, right?
Well, when you express concern about Biden's, you prove that Trump's is a big issue.
It's actually a big issue.
It's kind of a conundrum for them.
It's
but
hard,
anyhow, he was asked about that. And over Hunter Biden's business dealings. And so moderator Chuck Todd asked the Wisconsin Republican why he wasn't just as outraged about the business dealings of former President Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner. Here's part of the exchange.
Senate Democrats want to investigate Jared Kushner's loan from the Qatari government when he was working in the government negotiating many things in the Middle East. Are you not concerned about that? And I say that because it seems to me if you're concerned about what Hunter Biden did, you should be equally outraged about what Jared Kushner did.
I'm concerned about getting the truth. I don't target individuals.
You don't? You're targeting Hunter Biden multiple times on this show, Senator. You're targeting an individual.
Chuck, Chuck, part of the problem, and this is pretty obvious to anybody watching this, is you don't invite me on to interview me. You invite me on to argue with me. I'm just trying to lay out the facts.
Reverend Sharpton, Senator Ron Johnson just wants the truth. But he only wants the truth, of course, about certain individuals from certain parties, and he wants to ignore the truth from others. We know that our friend Joe Scarborough has compared Ron Johnson to someone who has rocks in his head. But it's more than just him. Joe, you do. And it's more than just him, though.
Maybe once.
Just a few.
Several times. That's something that we know that has become a blinders-on party, the Republican Party. And it seems to me, though, that this is setting a tone for what these next couple of years are going to look like, that the Republicans in the House are going to go after just what they want and how they want, and they're just going to try to ignore the rest.
And I think that what we that are trying to get some things done have to do is prepare ourselves for this is how the next 2 years are going to be with them. And, an old mentor of mine once told me, when you're flying and the pilot hits turbulence, he tries to go above the turbulence, not fly into it. We've got to try to keep raising the attention of the American public above the turbulence that the Republicans are going to keep throwing. So they're going to keep trying to bait us with Hunter Biden and ignore Jared Kushner, who was in government, in fact. Or they're going to try to bait us with Biden having a few sheets that maybe a staffer misplaced of classified documents and ignore the hundreds of documents that Donald Trump refused to give, and it took a raid to get some of them, and even then it was at a storage house. We can't get caught up in the noise. There are real things that the American people are concerned about, and I think that the people that keep their eye on the prize, as Martin Luther King would say, I'd encourage that on King Day, keep your eye on the prize and don't go for the turbulence. Try to find smooth air that will bring us where we need to as a country. And that's what I'm going to remain focused on, even though I know a lot about baptismal pools and know nothing about bathtub meth.
Yes, and of course, the question that a lot of people would like to ask John Heilman is whether Republicans went from bad bathroom bath to good, would it make a difference? But since I'm not qualified to answer that because I don't even know what you're talking about, I'm not going to ask that question. I do. Why don't we ask it? Let's ask another question, John Heilman, instead. An amen on baptismal waters. I'm with you, Rev. This Heilman thing. This guy's all Brooklyn. I don't know what part of Brooklyn that would be. I'm such a dumb country lawyer. But John Heilman, there are two questions that I would love to ask you. Neither one involving meth, and it has to do with conversations I've had over the past week with lot of Democratic insiders and other just politicos in Washington. The first is, do you think that these Biden documents will stop the Justice Department from prosecuting Donald Trump for his far more egregious mishandling of classified documents? That's question number one. And question number two, and this chatter has, as I'm sure in your circles too, has become really loud over the last week or two. Do you think this document dust up on the Biden side is going to make him think twice about running for re-election when word was he was ramping up to make an announcement soon?
Wow, those are two big questions and both grand invitations to speculate. I'll say a couple things. One is the answers to those questions lie in the minds of two men that none of us have access to, at least to my knowledge. One of whom is Merrick Garland, the other of whom is Joe Biden. On the basis of reporting and now having watched Garland on the first question operate over the last couple of years, it strikes me that we have seen that his degree of caution continues to be beyond the bounds of most of our abilities to imagine. He is proving to be extraordinarily cautious. I would also say much more political in the sense not that he's open to political influence, but that he's very attuned to both of, I think, these independent counsel appointments in both the Trump case and the Biden case, both driven by both a desire to get the law right, but also very much about a desire, an understanding of what the political parameters he's operating in. I think it's very hard to judge what Garland will do, although I will say that I think that by appointing the special counsel in the Biden case, it is a sign, I think, that Garland wants to leave open the door to doing, by treating them equally in terms of perception and politics, it leaves open the door to him to go down different paths. If the Biden thing turns out to be of no legal merit, and the Trump thing clearly has legal consequence, if the department can, on the law, make the case that Trump needs to be indicted, I think that Garland has now set himself up in his mind, and to the extent he can control the politics, to be able to do that. So I think he's left himself that ability. I think that's a lot of, at least part of, what this appointment in the Biden case was allowing Garland ultimately to make the decision on the basis of the law. On the question of Biden running again, I mean, everything I have been told by everybody close to Joe Biden has been he was inclined to run for re-election in 2024 before the midterms. He's 10 times more inclined to run for re-election in the wake of the results of the midterms. And we don't know enough about what's all involved. We have no idea how these documents got where they got to. We have no idea what's in these documents. Well, we do know that they are doing, unlike Trump, they are cooperating wholly with the Justice Department. But without knowing what's in the documents and without knowing exactly how they got there or why they got there, very hard to judge, Joe, because only Joe Biden knows that. Or maybe Joe Biden doesn't even know that. But I think it's very hard to judge what effect it might have on his considerations about running for re-election until we know a little bit more about the facts in that case.